Happy game day from Happy Valley. These are the Pregame Keys on the podcast. He is Jeremy Birmingham. I am Austin Ward. We are here, and kickoff is coming. Ohio State at Penn State. Status report is out, Berm. Lathan Ransom is available. Zen Michalski is out. The rest, basically unchanged for Ohio State. I don't know how much Lathan Ransom we're going to see. That's probably going to be the most, well, there's two interesting parts. I guess we'll take them one at a time.
Yeah.
The offensive line is probably more intriguing than the secondary spot, but I will be watching Lathan Ransom to see just how much he might give Ohio State defensively today. But those are the two key spots. What are you expecting?
Well, I mean, we've seen Ohio State not be shy in the past of saying someone's available and then not playing them. So I guess maybe I'm watching the game to see how it unfolds a little bit, to see what ends up happening with Lathan. If he plays like a full regiment, like that's a surprise based on what we've been hearing for the last couple of weeks. So clearly he is wanting to be on the field, and the Buckeyes, who have been very careful when it comes to players having nagging injuries, to not play them. So I guess we're going to find out early. But if he's not out there in that first series, I wouldn't expect to see him. Honestly, that's kind of the way I would view it. This feels like the way that things went with Carnell Tate a few weeks ago, where he can play, but maybe he's not gonna. So we'll find out. As far as the offensive line, I mean, it's been beaten to death all week. We still don't know. The Buckeyes are not in the building yet. We have not seen any warm-ups. They should be here in like 15, 20 minutes, and we'll get an idea then. But was what we talked about a lot on Friday night. Like, whoever is out there at left tackle, who's ever at left guard, Ohio State's coaching staff, it's on them to make sure that those guys are protected today, not necessarily the player, in my opinion.
Yeah, we've been inside Beaver Stadium for about 10 minutes. We've already heard, if you can't hear it, the cat sound has already been gone off about 55 times. So they're getting started early to get the juice going at Beaver Stadium for Penn State. Like, ton of traffic getting in here, ton of tailgating going on. You can tell that the big game atmosphere, as long as everyone can get in by noon, it's going to be loud. It's going to be very difficult. It's going to be hostile, which adds to some of the degree of difficulty for the Ohio State offensive line.
Yep. And again, it's about the coaching staff having this team prepared. They did not appear to have them prepared a week ago for the Nebraska game. And so I think that's first key for me is, are you mentally prepared for when the first punch gets landed? Because Penn State will land one early in this game, whether it's a big sack on third down, whether it's an interception, whatever it is. Are the Buckeyes prepared for what happens when this place gets loud? And it's not a night game. It's not a whiteout, but it will still get loud in here. And Will Howard and the Ohio State offensive line need to be working in tandem today to make sure that things don't get away from them when Penn State delivers that first punch. So it sounds maybe cliche or it sounds silly, but for me, that's key number one. Like, don't get knocked out early, because that's what Penn State is going to try to do.
You read my mind, because, I don't want this to be confused. It is not a notion that it's poor form to start fast, but I don't think that that's the key. If this is a talent-equated matchup, 4-quarter game, to use all of the buzzwords, you just have to hold your feet early on. Like, it is going to be loud. You don't want to commit stupid penalties early on. Penn State is probably going to throw some gadget stuff out there. They are going to want to land an early punch and try and not take Ohio State mentally out of this game. You can trail in this game. You don't have to score on your first possession. It'd be great if Ohio State does that, especially after all the intrigue that we have for the offensive line and the preparation coming off of last week's performance. But it is about making sure that you don't get checked out of that game immediately, because it is going to get adverse. It is going to be difficult. And the way Ohio State responds, as long as they are able to weather that first quarter storm, we've seen them trail by multiple possessions, multiple touchdowns in this building and in this series. It's okay. You just have to keep playing. If you start fast, all the better. But it is not a requirement. It is that you start tough.
Yeah, and I think that's why, despite all the discussion about the offensive line all week, to me, the position group that matters the most for Ohio State in this game is the defensive line.
Yeah.
Larry Johnson, we talked about it on Bold Predictions on Friday. Like, his guys generally get up for this game, but this is in the afternoon because we don't know who's playing quarterback for Penn State. I mean, they have question marks as well. We don't know if Danny Dennis Sutton is playing for them. We don't know who their quarterback's going to be. So it's really incumbent on the defensive line to get up and make an impact early and not allow Nicholas Singleton, whether if it's Mo Prabula, if it's Tyler Warren, whoever it is that Penn State is going to try to do the gadget stuff with early. The Ohio State defensive line has to set the tone.
Yeah, I honestly feel like, did you just steal all my keys this week? I think we see this game playing out the exact same way. I'm not as concerned. I believe that Ohio State's coaching staff is going to be able to scheme up ways around whatever deficiencies physically they might have on the offensive line. We'll see what that looks like. It is the fully healthy defensive line that has not played quite up to its full potential throughout the course of this year so far that has to meet the moment. Whether that means different personnel, whether that means rotation, whether that means 3-man front, 5-man front, whether that means blitzes, don't know, I don't care. If they get results, we're going to see it, we're going to know it. And JT Tuimoloau had the best performance of his career in this building 2 years ago. Jack Sawyer at the end of last year was playing like someone heading into the first round of the NFL draft. That has not happened through the first 2 months of the season for Ohio State, and it simply must happen today.
Yeah, they don't have any excuses. Well, that's the reality. We could probably sit here and come up with reasons why the offensive line may not be its best. I mean, there's a fairly big one considering they're missing their best player, but there's no excuse for the defensive line if you go out here today and get whipped by a Penn State offensive line that has been at times pretty suspect. If you watched them a week ago against Wisconsin, if you watched them against Bowling Green, if you watched them against anyone they've played this season, they have not been world beaters up front. So there's no excuse for Ohio State to not be out there and at least stalemate them. You maybe don't win every rep, but you shouldn't be getting whipped by this Penn State offensive line.
So I think I speak for Berm when the third pregame key has to be make sure Jeremiah Smith, Emeka Egbuka, and Carnell Tate are heavily involved in this offensive game plan. I know that you can get yourself into a tricky spot as a coaching staff. You're saying, well, it's got to be check off that touch, this touch, you got to get to this number. That's a delicate balance, what we're talking about. But I think everyone knows when they arrive on those buses and number 4 gets off and number 2 gets off the bus and number 17 gets off the bus, that they better be heavily involved in this game plan, or it's difficult to chart a path forward for Ohio State to win.
You fully would expect Penn State today to play a little too deep safety stuff, make Ohio State and Will Howard beat you underneath, force the Buckeyes to run the ball. So I agree, but it is going to come down to whether or not Ohio State can at least show some competency running the ball early in this game and allowing things to open up for those guys. Jeremiah Smith and Emeka Egbuka are good enough. They're going to get open no matter what Penn State is doing. But for it to be effective for the duration of this game, it's going to be about the running backs seeing things and turning those 3-yard runs that they've had the last 2 weeks into 5-yard runs and not letting them stay in 1.5, 2-yard runs, which is what's happened, unfortunately, a lot in the last couple of weeks. But Ryan Day talked about it all week. You do what you got to do to win the game, right? So if running the ball doesn't work early, then just put it on Will Howard and let him go win it for you, because I think he can do it.
Would you take an 85% Lathan Ransom or the combination that we saw last week, which I think was probably better than I anticipated it looking? I didn't love some of the packaging with the personnel in and out going through nickel and base, but Jalen McClain played well. He graded out much better in coverage than he made one play maybe that boosted it up pretty significantly. Jordan Hancock had one of his better games of the year. Lorenzo Styles has been, he's not a world beater, but certainly very solid in the nickel. And you've got to figure Arvell Reese, who got the reprieve from the Big Ten and the Rules Committee earlier in the week. I don't know. Which is better between those two conversations?
I don't know. We've talked it to death since Ohio State started doing this injury report thing. They have been for the last couple of years. If Lathan Ransom's not on it, then he should be good enough to play, right? So that's the expectation. If he's good enough to play, then play him, because he's the best option out there. He's been so good in run support, and that's what you're going to need against Penn State. That's with Tyler Warren, with Nicholas Singleton, with Katron Allen, with Bo Perbula. You're going to need that safety help to be a guy who can come down and be an enforcer, because Penn State does not have the types of receivers that you should be scared of on the outside. So if Lathan's good to go, and they say he is by not being on the availability report, then play him.
All right, the Buckeyes are going to be pulling in right to my left in, 15 minutes or so, and then kickoff coming at high noon in here at Beaver Stadium. Can't wait. One of the biggest games of the college football season, number 3 versus number 4 in here, with big, high stakes Big Ten championship game implications, especially for the Buckeyes, who already have that one loss. So looking forward. Don't know what's going to happen. Can't wait to find out with you all. We'll break it down afterwards with the notebook and snap judgments right back in here, Beaver Stadium in Happy Valley. He's Berm. I'm Austin. Enjoy the game, folks. We'll see you afterwards.